The biggest overall message is one of hope and healing for people to realize that there is an opportunity to get beyond the stuff that has been really tearing people down for decades. Here's some way that maybe can really relieve their burden, open things up for them, help them get past whatever it is they've been struggling with. There is healing available.
Welcome to Inner Source. I'm Dr. Sandra Dreisbach. Whether you're just beginning to explore your inner landscape or you've been doing this work for years and understand that transformation is a lifelong journey, this is your space. We're diving into real conversations about personal growth, shadow work, and what it actually takes to create lasting change from the inside out. Because the truth, your most powerful healing tool isn't out there somewhere. It's already within you. Let's connect to that inner source together.
The information shared on this podcast, our website, and other platforms may be triggering for some viewers and readers and is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical, legal, or therapeutic advice. While we explore topics related to altered states of consciousness, we do not endorse or encourage illegal activities or substance use. Always research your local laws and consult qualified professionals for guidance. The content provided is, as is, and we are not liable for any actions taken based on the information shared. Stay supported and informed, act responsibly, and enjoy the podcast.
In today's episode, I talk with filmmaker Scott Wright. Now, Scott Wright didn't start doing documentaries. He actually started by doing 25 years in radio, rising from his high school station in suburban Chicago to become America's most listened to DJ in the 1980s on Z100 in New York, and his nationally syndicated Hitline USA. Listeners knew him as Shadow, Steel, or simply The Shadow. The Shadow does know, I guess. He's one of a handful who've topped the radio ratings in America's three biggest markets, New York, LA, and Chicago. He went on to be a national programming executive for major radio chain and then a marketing and promotion executive for major labels in the record industry. Switching to film, he produced and directed 3 Days of Glory, a feature documentary that premiered on Hulu in 2018, now streaming on Tubi, and created and produced the rock documentary John Waite, The Hard Way, released in late 2022, and currently streaming on Amazon Prime Video. Scott and his wife, Martha, split their time in an apartment in Paris, which is where I meet with him today to talk with, a condo in New Orleans, and a cabin on the White Salmon River in Washington State. But today we're in Paris. His latest film, which is what we spend most of our time discussing, is the next chapter, Psychedelics, Healing, and the Second Half of Life, which is being released this June. Probably when you're going to be hearing this particular episode. We're gonna wait a little bit just so you can be able to hear it right beforehand, because it looks like it's coming out just before solstice. And I love that Scott Wright's energy, his commitment, his own story of his own personal experience, his own inner source and journey with psychedelics and plant medicines that came to him later in life, and then inspired him to be able to create this documentary. And then later his wife ends up even joining him in the experience. And now the world gets to see how he shifted and how that is now creating a shift for others. And he really wants to talk to people about why people who are of an older age group, why they can also still receive healing and transformation at a time in life when people are expected to just retire and just, go away. In a lot of Western culture, unfortunately, I don't feel like we do enough to treasure our elders. But the idea that we're now in a generation that embraces more healing and transformation and connecting to our inner source and guidance, that it's never too late. So I love this story. I haven't had a chance to see the documentary yet, as you'll hear in this podcast, but I imagine it's going to be amazing, and I look forward to watching it. And I hope you enjoy this conversation, this really honest and frank conversation between Scott and I about this documentary on psychedelic healing for people who are our elders. Well, I'm very grateful to have you here today, Scott. I love that we got to connect and hear about your work, and I want to hear a bit about this journey you've had with this documentary on psychedelic therapy. But I first want you to be able to share anything you want to share about yourself. Like, how did you end up getting to do documentary work? What was your personal journey about film?
That's a good question. Like everything else in my life, I just kind of fell into it and never would have expected any of this. Yeah, I've done a lot of things. I was a radio disc jockey for 20 years, playing rock and roll records and interviewing rock stars on the radio. I was an executive in the major label record business. I was a winemaker in Oregon. I was a wine importer in Burgundy and Champagne here in France.
Yes, and you're contacting in from Paris, France. I should locate you a little bit here, right?
Yeah, we're right here in the 3e arrondissement, in the Marais section of Paris. Uh, so I've always loved cinema, and at some point, I knew I wanted to do something in that world. But while I was still in the wine business, there was a young filmmaker in Oregon who approached me to be in a documentary that he was making about people in the wine industry who had done something else interesting before they got into wine. In the United States, almost everybody in the wine industry didn't grow up in that business because it's a very young industry. It's only 40, 50, 60 years old. Whereas in Europe, people have, 15 generations of
It's
winemakers in their
generations. It's yeah,
family.
right. It's the family vineyard, right, yeah.
Yeah. So he made this movie called American Wine Story, and he interviewed me and Drew Bledsoe, who used to be a quarterback in the NFL, other people who had done, fairly interesting things before they changed their lives to get into wine. So that's how I met this guy named David Baker. He teaches filmmaking at Oregon State University. He interviewed me for that film. We stayed in touch, and a few years later, I had an idea for a film I wanted to make about what was happening in Burgundy and how climate change was drastically affecting the wine industry over here in France. And so he and I collaborated on that, and we made that film. We shot it in 2016 and 17, released it in 2018, and suddenly I was, just full head of steam going into the wine world, into the film world. So that's how it all came about, really. I saw a story that I thought needed to be told, and I didn't think anyone could tell it quite the way I could because I was an insider. I was living in it, and I saw stuff that nobody else from the outside would ever be able to get at. So that's how it all started.
I love that you even started in radio, television, film, and doing interviews, and then, I actually had some time where I was a station manager at college and things like that and interviewing people, so I love that we have some of that in common, and then to actually do the record industry and then the journey into wine, and being a winemaker, and then to find yourself doing documentary film. Now we should tell people more about like, well, what is the insight you had? So what is the documentary about? Tell us about the documentary. What's the inspiration for it? I mean, a lot of people end up talking about psychedelic therapy or psychedelic medicine or traditional medicines for different reasons. Sometimes they have medicine in their family for generations, just like people have wine in generations. But again, just like wine, a lot of people in the West, it's fairly new. Um, what was your experience with psychedelics or with plant medicine?
This film was born totally out of personal experience. Every movie I've made so far was a very personal endeavor. All the screenplays that I'm writing are also very personal, based on stuff I've experienced or been a part of uh, in my life. But this film is called The Next Chapter. The subtitle is Psychedelics, Healing, and the Second Half of Life. But it came about from totally a personal experience. I was fascinated by Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. I guess I read it about maybe 8 years ago, and I read it twice because it was a lot of information to absorb, and it really piqued my curiosity. And I said, okay, here's an older guy who's my age, he's exactly my age, and he has gone and done ayahuasca and psilocybin and LSD and licked the toad, and, did, done the full circuit of the psychedelic stuff that was out there, reported on his experiences, had some great experiences, did some great reporting. He's a great journalist, a great writer, and I thought, okay, this is something I want to check out. I was not exactly chomping at the bit to do it, but it was pulling at me. I was being drawn. So it took me a couple of years to get up the nerve to actually take the dive and go for it. And so I got on the internet, and this is pre-Chat GPT, so you actually Googled things. So I Googled around to find places where you can do it, because in the United States at that time, it was not legal anywhere. Now it is in Oregon and Colorado, and very soon in New Mexico, and hopefully other places in the not-too-distant future. But at that point, you had to go to Mexico or Costa Rica or Jamaica or the Netherlands or other places. So I found an American woman who was practicing in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. Her name is Maria Camille. She was like 71 or 72 years old at the time. And she had been working with returning veterans, treating PTSD with psilocybin at a mountain retreat in Colorado for quite some time. She has an amazing background. She was a world champion skydiver. She ran luxury resorts. She produced beauty TV shows. She did all sorts of stuff. But at the root of it, she had this deep connection with plant medicine, specifically psilocybin, and found that she had a gift for facilitating and holding space for people to go through a journey. So I found her on the internet. We connected, did a couple of Zoom calls, and I felt like it was a good fit, a good rapport between us. So I made an appointment, and my wife and I went down to San Miguel de Allende in February of 2023, so 3 years ago, and did the experience, and absolutely changed my life in the most unbelievably profound and powerful way. I'm still processing and integrating and downloading it 3 years later. But it became very clear during the integration process afterward that it was clear to me, and also to Maria, the facilitator, that I was being called to be involved in this space in some way. And Maria said, maybe there's a good movie to be made about this. It's interesting that all of my clients, everyone is coming to me from all over the world. They're all older people. They are all 55, 65 plus or older. And I thought, wow, that is an interesting hook for a movie. And I said, well, that happens to be what I do. I'm a documentary filmmaker. And she said, oh my God, because we hadn't even talked about that, and all the talking we were doing.
And
We
all
were
your
just talking.
intake and prep and everything.
Yeah, no, in the intake, we were talking about all the psychological baggage that I was carrying and stuff I
Right, of
needed to deal
course.
with. But we were talking about my various careers. So it became very clear, okay, there's a cool movie to be made here. So we arranged a retreat in Mexico a year later, and she had people that had existing clients or people who wanted to be clients who were on the waiting list to come see her. We got 8 people who agreed to come in to be filmed going through a group journey, a group experience, and a retreat there for 4 days, and that's pretty amazing.
Psilocybin, just to confirm, right?
Yeah, all psilocybin, and just unbelievable that people are willing to, be filmed going through all of this and opening up their hearts and their souls, very vulnerable.
Absolutely. I mean, in ethics, I actually talk a lot about it because there are concerns around consent. And especially if they don't have an experience, they may not know what they're consenting to. But which is a big deal, right? I'm curious, what sort of extra things did you do to help prepare people, or did the guide do to help prepare people, given that they're going to be filmed?
Maria prepared the people, I think, quite a bit, and just she screened them to make sure they were really comfortable with it and understood that, everything was liable to be filmed and fair game. And then when everybody arrived, I was like part of the group. I wasn't going to journey with them, but I was made a part of the group for all the pre-discussions and the circle meetings that we had, and the cacao ceremonies we were doing, and I was brought in to feel a part of the group. So we had a rapport, and so maybe, hopefully, that the camera wouldn't seem so intrusive. But in fact, filming the ceremony, so there's not really much to see. There's 8 people tripping their brains out, laying there with masks on or whatever, and there's not much action. So
Well, I mean,
that,
in contrast, there's like a lot of action. It's just not visible action in the same way,
exactly.
right? It's internal action, and I think that alone is worth noting because a lot of the transformation is all internal, and people can't see it, and you look the same on the outside, and then you come out, let's say a few weeks later, and you talk to the same people you talked to a few weeks prior, and you really have changed.
Powerful stuff was interviewing each of them individually, very intensely before the journey, then filming the journey, and then interviewing them again very, very deeply the day after they'd had 24 hours to process what they'd been through. And it's mind-blowing to look on the screen and look at the same person from day before the journey and the day after, and you see a different light in their eyes, a different spirit in their countenance. These people's lives were changed, and it's visible. It's not just by the stuff that they're saying. You can see it. It's palpable. It's very cool.
And it wasn't just that day after, right? You also took, you talked to them later.
Yeah, then we went back a year later and talked to everybody again to see how their lives had changed and been affected a year down the line. And it's a really cool group of people who were the last people on Earth you would be expected to be, dabbling in psychedelics. There's a kindergarten teacher, a guy who's a famous comic book artist, a retired accountant, a CPA kind of guy, a union organizer, just normal and most regular people, all in their late 50s into late 60s in this particular group. And they all had, their own individual life stories that they brought to it, whether it was decades-long, quote-unquote, untreatable depression, or PTSD from childhood abuse and trauma, to existential crises, to just getting older and your kids are grown and gone and you're 65 years old and you might live another 30 years and you don't know where it's all going.
Yeah, what's my life about now? Right, yeah. But I'm curious, 1 year afterwards, I know there's the documentary and if, obviously, people, you should check it out. If you're curious at all about what's coming up in this story. But what did you find overall, like, a year later with a lot of these people? Because sometimes people talk about, like, the sort of immediate post-glow, right? They're really still, even though the medicine isn't necessarily as active in their body, sometimes it's artificially hyping them, because they just got through, an intense experience. They're having the peak of the sort of, like, post-journey. And actually even some of the research, like, Gouldon's research talking about the window, afterwards, where that medicine still has an effect on the brain, several months after, depending upon the substance. I mean, iboga, like, up to 6 months after. So I was curious, like, 1 year after, at least that that's complete. They've gone through at least the major parts of integration. Obviously, you're sharing, like, it's been a few years since your journey, and you're still integrating. And I totally agree. Like, there's always things you can pull from experiences years down the line. But what were you finding with this? I'll just say older generation or elder generation of participants a year afterwards. What were some of the experiences, or what were some of the sharings that you saw from the people in what you recorded, or even what wasn't captured?
Sure. The 1 year after stuff was pretty interesting in that I think roughly half the people who were part of this retreat had drastically changed their lives, or or what they were doing for a living, or their careers, or whatever you want to call it. And 3 or 4 of them a year later were now working in the psychedelic space.
Yeah, no, that's actually not uncommon. I mean, to the point actually that we even caution people like, "Hey, you just had a great experience. It doesn't mean you should go into this work," right? Like they want to tell the world, like, but like, okay, let's wait, let's integrate, give yourself some time, think about your life. It doesn't mean that this is, but in other cases, it really is. Or with you, it really was a calling to do this documentary.
A couple of them were already working in the psychological universe, they were trained therapists and whatever, and so this is something that just changed their direction a little bit, and they added this to their arsenal of what they did, and they got trained to be facilitators. A couple of people retired because they got the message that it was really time to step off the train they were on, and they just decided to retire and you know go on and do whatever amused them. One person had th- gone into it thinking that he wanted to get clarity on his retirement, and he came out and said, "Yes, it is time to retire." And a year later, he was still working, and he was kind of upset that it hadn't happened fast enough. He was the one who was like, um, yeah, he thought he was there, but no, he was still in the office grinding away. And then a couple of months after that, it finally did happen. He was able to work it out so he could retire, and he reached out and wrote to me this beautiful email about, I'm sorry, I probably didn't sound very good when we interviewed 1 year after the journey, but now everything that I envisioned has finally been put into place for me, and it's all come together, and I'm going back to Mexico like next week to do another journey to put like a bookend on the end of all of this, he told me.
That's really beautiful, that's really powerful, and and it sounds like overall the results were positive, and I don't wanna give people illusion, like, it's not always positive for everyone, right? Some people have challenges and it brings more things up, but sounds like overall the participants had a positive experience and it created positive transformation in their lives.
In general, absolutely. And one of the participants who wasn't scheduled to be in it was my wife. She was there just sort of there to help out and be a part. And at the last minute, she decided she was being called to give it a shot because she had never really thought she wanted to do it. And she spoke to the facilitators, and they agreed it would be okay to come in at that point because she had already been a part of the group and everybody felt comfortable and connected. So she came in and she had a really wonderful experience that she's still unpacking to this day. And so this was 2 years ago. We shot this original retreat, and as she works as a coach for people who are trying to get control of alcohol in their lives. She helps. She's a sober mindful drinking coach, and it's interesting that now psychedelics is also starting to pop up in that world as well.
Absolutely. I know many people in the recovery space, and it's been some people even being led to microdose as a way to control their cravings, which is an interesting thing. That I think we're going to be finding in the coming years a lot more research and insights on what people have been doing just personally, and having more research or facts, or even just more confidence in themselves and in their own and journeys around it. But what would you say is the overall message of your film? I can't help but ask that question, like, what's the message? That doesn't matter how old you are, you can still have
I
psychedelics?
think it's never too late to dig down deep and take a look at whatever it is that you need to deal with or haven't been dealing with, and to find your way clear and through whatever that is, and find your way forward. No matter what age, we're always looking for what's next, what's the way forward, and this plant medicine seems to unlock that for a lot of people.
I couldn't agree more. I've definitely borne witness to that change and transformation, and I definitely think that Michael Pollan's book was a catalyst, especially for, I would say, your generation to be able to access and see it as more possible for them, and that's worth, giving credit to. What about you? Like, are you thinking about doing more journeys yourself?
I did another journey just less than 6 months ago, another full dose journey, and it was nowhere near as pleasant as the first one, to say the least.
I don't mean to laugh at that. I just mean it's not uncommon.
It, it uh, They say you get the journey you need at the time, and obviously I needed to have my nose pushed in the mess that I made on the rug and deal with some more stuff. So it was ultimately a very good experience, but it was physically difficult at the time. I felt nauseated and like I wanted to purge, and nothing was coming up. Yeah, it was not painful, but uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. Yeah, and what would you say about, there are unique needs and differences, if you are older, and obviously we're not medical experts, we're not therapists, we're not trying to give you medical advice or therapeutic advice, but but there's a reality of it. What sort of unique things came up with the group that you worked with in the documentary around either their different needs personally or as a group? I mean, obviously you spoke to the fact that people still have the opportunity, don't you're not done with life. Obviously, there's so much more healing and transformation and beauty that you can experience. But what about other things that came up around this particular group?
It was, I think, for most of these people, it was like a huge letting go. Our generation, the baby boomers, we grew up in a time where nobody went to therapy. That had a big stigma culturally. You didn't do that. That was for people who were mentally ill. You were sick. If it doesn't need a psychiatrist, you had to, really be cracked up. So we stuffed everything down and just ate it and didn't deal with it. And then you get into your 60s and you've been through a whole life's worth of just normal life events, and then carrying all that stuff down in the background. At some point, the dam's got to burst. So this was a big opening of floodgates for most of these people. It's very clear that there was just decades and decades worth of stuff there that had never really been dealt with. So it was just a big opening and connecting to uh, the reality that we don't see in what we call normal consciousness. And once that's been unlocked and you've seen that, you can't unsee it. It changes everybody's perspective going forward, whether it's a huge, profound, life-changing experience like some people have, like mine was. My wife's was not. My wife's was a great experience, but it wasn't just this big, huge explosion of gigantic concrete boulders of new nuggets. It was just a gentler a gentler experience, even though it was a full dose. So it was interesting to see that everyone was on different dosages too. And the facilitators had a way of sort of sussing out what people needed, and no one had been on SSRIs for a long time, so that was helpful. But still, some people 3 or 4 grams and they're off to the outer reaches of the universe, and some people 5, 6, or 7 and they don't get off.
Well, and I know we're not here to talk about this, but there's a lot of differences in varieties of mushrooms,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
there's a difference in terms of how route of administration and delivery. There's a lot of differences in just like it's not about weight, it's not about age per se. From what research has shown, there's actually differences in individuals that can't always be predicted prior to the experience. So there's a yeah, and a lot of people, facilitators that I'm aware of will even offer bumps, as they call it, um, uh, to increase the dosage, part of the journey in, because it's that challenging. At least with psilocybin, different medicines, different effects. But just to make a note, but I love that you shared the fact about being a part of a generation where therapy was not only was it not normalized, right, like it is now, like, it's like everyone's in therapy, everyone's getting, a coach, everyone's getting, having support. Heck, even that ChatGPT we mentioned earlier, like, people are talking to AI now for support and coaching and facilitation, right, but to have it be in the place where it was anything mentally ill was taboo. It's not just a level of, like, It's normal to have a certain amount of area that you may need to be working on in healing and transformation, but that there's something really broken with you, and to go to a therapist means that you're literally a non-functional person, or you're crazy, or right, like it's a sign of dysfunction and taboo.
Exactly, exactly, yeah. So thank God that the generations behind us have opened up that door and made it much more normalized, for people to actually go talk through stuff. But, I think from my experience anyway, the cliche is true. A full dose psilocybin journey is could be about 10 or 20 years of therapy in a few hours. It's
Well, I wanna be cautious with that one because, like, I'm the ethicist person, but, like, because, like, sometimes we criticize that because, it can give an inflated sense of, like, you're going to get this much healing done in that period of time, but in terms of a breakthrough, I think that that can be really true, and the fact that it can create that big of a mindset shift, right, that maybe that people may be reticent to do or create or have access to, that regular talk therapy has more challenges with, right? And that's if I mean, there's many routes for healing, right? But, but there are also real reasons why people say this, right? They have had, dramatic shifts. What about the integration period? Like, I don't know, how much did you feature integration as part of these people's journeys, and how much was included for them?
a good amount was included, for the people who were there. That's not so much integration necessarily going on in the film necessarily, but
No, I
the
figured there wouldn't be, yeah.
yeah, but what they experienced was, a lot of group stuff and then multiple, one-on-one, individual stuff with, there were 2 facilitators there, Maria, who ran the whole thing, and then her colleague, Nate McCanian came in because he was more experienced with doing larger groups. Maria usually does just one-on-ones. So that everyone had one-on-ones with them as well, and then they continued after they left to have more sessions online with them as well.
Yeah, maybe I can invite you to do a documentary on integration, but, no pressure, no pressure. But I bring it up for a reason because, like, there are a lot of great, there are some great films on psychedelics and psychedelic therapy or, altered states or traditional medicine or even, seeing curanderas, or roadmen or roadwomen, to for their experiences, and and a lot of times you don't always and I love that you took the time to come back to them a year later to see where they were at. I think that's very insightful because you get more of a sense of like, well, that may be where they were the day after, but where were they a year later? Did this stick? Did this and actually some of the research, like the John Hopkins smoking cessation study, like one of the things that made it so notable was to see that a lot of that change lasted over a year post experience, right? But it's also nice to see and understand, like, look, hey, it wasn't just the journey. They had extra support. They had one-on-one experiences. They had integration. You may not see it filmed, but it was there, and you can see the evidence of it. When you come back to them a year later.
Yeah, another interesting thing from the 1 year down the line, revisit was that virtually everybody, is now microdosing.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, because I would say, at least anecdotally, in my experience with people I know in the community, that's really common. That they may not be going on the big journeys all the time or anything like that, but they may be using it as a supplement, right? Like, and still work in relationship with it for a period of time, or intuitively, or different, or on a protocol. And there's different protocols.
I've been doing the Fadiman protocol for off and on, a month or 2 on, month off, that kind of stuff, and I'm still I don't really know yet what I think about or feel about it, but I continue to do it, and I think it's interesting, and I'm doing it with the intention of trying to help unlock creativity in my writing, and I think there's times that I can attribute getting into a really cool flow state that may be partially a result of that, but I've also gotten in the flow state without microdosing. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, and I'm curious, since, obviously you recorded them a year later, but what about yourself? So obviously you got inspired for this journey to do a documentary. You did the documentary, you followed them up after a year, and you're still microdosing now. What what have you learned now that you're a few years post the initial experience?
huh, that it's not a magic bullet, uh, that it shows you stuff you need to work on. It doesn't do the work.
Yeah, you still need to do the work, everyone. And what is the work for you? I should be clear because a lot of times we say do the work, but people are like, what do you mean? What's the work?
For me, the work was prior to my journey, I had spent a lot of my adult life being incredibly insecure, incredibly antisocial, always feeling less than. And as a result, being a bit of a jerk and being very judgy, and to the point where it embarrassed my wife and my daughter, the way I would behave around people, only because I felt I was insecure or inadequate and being judged. So I lashed out at other people, and that just crippled me for a long, 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 long time. Uh, and now having those doors opened up for me, I've tried to push myself in the other direction. I've become very social. I'm meeting people. I'm joining groups. I'm starting film clubs. Uh, actively seeking out social connection, which was like the antithesis of most of my life. And it's still not easy for me, but the more you do it, the better it gets. And every time I get out of my comfort zone, I thought, okay, A, that didn't hurt, and B, that was actually kind of cool. It's 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 worth going there. But
It's
I
beautiful.
still no, thank you. Yeah, and I'm still working on it. And there's times where it's very easy to fall back into the old stuff. So yeah.
But it sounds like it transformed your relationship with your wife and your daughter.
Very much so. We've always been very, very close, and they were kind enough and generous enough to love me and support me, even in that old incarnation. But the new one, I think they like a lot better. Yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful that you've had the experience and you've had a positive journey and that you got to transmute and translate that into film that we get to experience and see and share. And it really is a family journey. Like I love that, your wife ended up being a part of it and it was also an outward expression of you and you were in relationship with the people. It wasn't like you were just trying to be this sort of objective observer, not that anyone's objective, but you were having cacao ceremony, even if you weren't having the psilocybin with them, that you were joining them in spirit, as it were.
Exactly. Yeah. And the community that was formed from that retreat, is we still feel very bonded. We have a group chat on WhatsApp, and people are still talking. Years later. We just had our 2-year anniversary call, and everybody got on, and we brought everybody up to speed on what was going on in their lives, and any new revelations people had had, and things that had changed since we did the 1 year interviews, and it was fascinating. And there's just so much love and deep connection from this group of people who, the day before the journey, no one had met anyone. They were complete strangers. So it was pretty powerful to show how we are wired as human beings for connection, for community, uh, and then how this plant medicine and this kind of therapy can even deepen those connections so much.
And that's so beautiful that you guys are still in touch, and that's a real testament to not only the container that you helped to build through even through film, but also what the medicine and working in conscious relationship did for all of you, and that you're still communicating, you're still sharing 2 years later, right? How does everyone have they all seen the film?
No, I mean, it's not finished yet. They've seen little bits and pieces and clips we've been using for some promotional stuff, but as we speak, I'm still editing, and we're working on it. It's coming out in late June, so we've got 2 months to get this polished up and ready to go. But Yeah, no, they're all excited to see it, and they're probably all a little bored of me saying, "I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it." But
It's a process, editing takes time. But I mean, yeah, I really meant that they had a chance to see the clips and the portions that they may have been more involved in, or at least get a sense of what they're gonna be seeing in the final product.
yeah, they've seen the little sneak preview clips we've done, and so they have an overall idea of what the vibe of what the piece is gonna look like, yeah.
Well, and I know you don't have I mean, do you have a set release date? You know, what can we tell people who wanna see this film?
What we can tell people who wanna see this film, we have just set the world premiere for June 18th in Toronto, Canada. It'll be in a beautiful old theater there, with the Psychedelic Association of Canada involved uh, s some local people from the mental health organizations up there. Uh, there's been a lot of, psychedelic groups around the country and around the world who have reached out to want to help and be a part of this process. So these people in Canada were the first to step up, say, "We wanna have the world premiere here." So that's happening there, and then about 2 weeks after that, it'll be available online all over the world, and I can't tell you exactly where yet, but, by the time this airs, I might be able to give you a link.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to share it with our viewers, because I would love to be able for them to be able to check it out and see it and experience it. And hopefully we'll have at least a trailer to give them by that point too.
Oh,
But I'm
yeah, no, the trailer's almost done. I'll
oh,
have the
great.
official final trailer for you pretty soon, so.
Yeah, I felt like everyone you're getting an extra sneaky sneak peek just by even having this conversation, like I'll delay it a little bit for coming out so that it'll be a little bit closer to release time, but I'm very grateful to be able to be a part of this film's release, and I also am curious to hear, because this is inner source. What what for you would you recommend people who are interested in having a transformational journey, who may or may not be older, um, whether they're interested in taking psychedelics or not, or maybe advice you want to give people who are curious about that? What guidance would you tell someone who's seeking that same transformation that they see in you in this podcast?
A couple of things. First of all, make sure that you have no medical or psychiatric, contraindications to do it, because there are some physical and psychiatric risks. You need to have those properly assessed, by your doctor or your psychiatrist. If there's, any history of, schizophrenia or first-degree relatives bipolar, that's probably a contraindication. You shouldn't be, messing around with psychedelics.
At least a extra consideration, right? Yeah, you should at least seek a professional consult, right, especially with those things.
And there are cardiac issues for people who may have issues there that your doctor should clear you for that. Then, I would recommend if they're in the United States, now you can go to Colorado or Oregon, where there are certified, trained, people doing this, and it's much easier to access. Uh, and there's go interview people and find someone that you resonate with. Find an organization that speaks to your needs and that feels comfortable to you, because there are as many different facilitators and organizations as there are people looking for a journey. So find something that you feel comfortable with, and don't just go to the first one that says, yeah, they'll do it for you.
Yeah, that's really wise, actually. Like, maybe we could go into that a little bit here, because, like, I mean, obviously, screening matters. No matter who your provider is, or who's supporting you, no matter what you're doing in life. But how? And you mentioned having a good rapport with your facilitator, who then ended up being the facilitator for, or at least co-facilitator for the journeys you recorded. But what were some of the things you were looking for? What were some of the Did you have any advice? Did you have any sense of guidance on how to select a facilitator? What were the sort of signs for you?
I just went into it cold, and I just go off the vibe I have with people. Even though I was antisocial and not a very community-oriented person, I always can tell immediately whether I connect with someone or not, if we're on the same plane in some way, shape, or form, and I can tell right away whether people, there's a chance that we're gonna connect or not. And with Maria, there was an immediate connection. I could just there was an obvious vibe there that we were going to be simpatico, and she understood what I had to say. And when she said stuff, it wasn't like she was speaking a foreign language. I understood the meaning behind what she was saying. There was a clear connection there. And the deeper we got into it, the more comfortable it felt. And she just felt like someone that I knew I would feel safe and held. And you can't guarantee that, but you have to trust your instincts at some point, I guess. And
So, but I think that sense of being safe and held, like that sense of trust. So it's like connection, safety, being held, like being supported. That was coming to you before you even was in an experience with her, that you had that sense, and you also had a sense of trusting yourself. It sounds like, in knowing that you have a good sense of discernment when it comes to people. Whereas, like, you won't hear those particular things when people are selecting, let's say, a doctor or a surgeon, right? They're like, oh, I felt like they could keep me safe and they were going to hold me in and then I could trust them, even though like they could be trusting people with like their heart and their lives, right?
yeah, no, most of us, if you have a medical problem, somebody say, "Oh, well, this guy's supposed to be good. Great. Well, give me that guy."
Right, they just go on like, "Oh, he's just skilled." It's about the skill of the practice. I'm not saying that there aren't skills in facilitators, there absolutely are. It's a different skill set. It's a different, sense of feeling of safety and support and trust, and I really appreciate you bringing those aspects up. When did, your family members meet the facilitator you work with?
My wife actually jumped on one of the first Zoom calls I had made with her. She just stuck her head in to say hello, and I said, "Come in here. This is Maria. Say hi to Maria." And so she got a sense of her right away as well, because my wife also has a good vibe, and it didn't set off any warning bells for her. She said, "If you feel comfortable, that seems like she'd be good." So.
No, I appreciate that because, like, it's worth noting that not everyone shares with their family members or people who are close to them that they're even considering a journey, right? And the fact that, it was an open process, your wife knew about it, she even was helping to support your facilitator choice, even though it was obviously your decision. It's nice to know that that was part of your experience, at least from my perspective.
Knowing that I was completely supported on the family end was very important. If it was something that I would have felt uncomfortable because there was a negative vibe from them, that would have colored it completely differently.
You travel the world through the year, and the rules are different in different countries. Like in France, I'm pretty confident that that's not accessible at this time. And I want to respectfully acknowledge, vive la France, but but Canada, there's some access, but it's more like for palliative care or for on a need basis type of aspect. And that there's some through clinical trials in Canada. And obviously, United States has some legal access that is increasing. Australia has some legal access, but it's only through providers. So, like, just to keep in mind, everyone, like, it really will vary based on where you're located in the world, and check your laws and in your state and country, and region. But I think it's also worth saying that that's a real challenge for people. Like, not everyone can go to Mexico, right, to be able to have an experience.
And you could go to Mexico or Costa Rica or Jamaica or whatever, and not have a good experience. There are a lot of people that this field has exploded in the last 5 years, and there are more people, practicing in this area who, may or may not be, great at what they do.
I think that's really worth saying. I think, I've said it in other places, but maybe it's worth repeating here that, like, there are not currently clear standards of practice or training or education. It doesn't mean that there aren't training programs out there for facilitators. There's tons. I've taken tons myself, and I have facilitated, and different medicines require different training and different understanding and different contexts. Traditional medicine keepers in traditional ways I can't speak for, but at the same time, there are other modalities, other cultural ways that all these practices are leaning on. But we can't. I want to acknowledge those original medicine keepers, at least in this moment here. But I just want to take real gratitude to you for endeavoring on not only your own personal journey, but willing to share it here with me and to talk about the documentary and to share that with the world. What's ultimately like the feeling you want someone to come out with on the other side of the documentary journey?
The biggest overall message is one of hope and healing for people to realize that there is an opportunity to get beyond the stuff that has been really tearing people down for decades. And, the psychomedicines weren't doing it. Maybe talk therapy wasn't doing it or wasn't doing much. Here's some way that maybe can really relieve their burden, open things up for them, help them get past whatever it is they've been struggling with. There is healing available. It's a powerful healing. It's not for everybody, but it's a very powerful avenue for people to explore. It's not a magic bullet. It's not for everybody. But again, I made this movie to try and spread the message of hope and healing because I personally experienced it and I saw it happen with a random group of just really human beings. There was nothing special or unique about these people. They were just humans, just like you and me. And their lives were positively and powerfully impacted. And if we can just reach a few more people who need assistance, that's why we're doing it.
Thank you so much, Scott. That's a power. You're more than just an ordinary human in that sense to me, to give a message of hope and healing and transformation that is possible. It doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter, what's failed you, whether it be medicines or therapy or whatever. There's still hope for you. There's still healing that's possible for you, and I think that's a beautiful message to leave us with.
Yeah, and that we're all connected. It's all one thing, and that was the biggest revelation for me is seeing the interconnectedness of all life, and that when that is stuck in your face it's in a clear and in a way that there's no way that you could say it. It's not there. It's so real, and that after you pass the journey, you realize it's still there, and you see it every day.
And you bring it to your ordinary life. You bring it. You don't lose that. You keep that, right? I really love that message because I think that's, at least with psilocybin, I would have to say that it's at least my predominant experience has been that sense of connection and the beauty of connection and the beauty of relationship and interrelationship and building us closer together in relationship. And if you have that richness of like that, people talk about the peak experience, you come out of it being more connected. It's not disconnecting you. It's not a dissociative. There are dissociatives out there. It is not a dissociative, and it's not like MDMA, which is an entactogen, which is a different type of therapy, different type of modality. And I think that's something else people can appreciate. But psilocybin, at least, I feel really does want to help transform us and help us feel more connected to each other and build those relationships. And as evidence from your film and from the relationships that you share in it and the relationships that you clearly still have and building even here with you and I, like here we are building greater relationship in community, and we can say the mushroom made us do it. I don't know. Didn't make us do anything, didn't make us do anything. We're conscious beings. But the sense like, I can see the beauty and connection and relationship. Like I haven't seen any of the film yet. I look forward to seeing it. I haven't met any of the people, but I can feel that sense of connection and relationship. So thank you for being in relationship with me today, Scott, and relationship with the people and community that I talk with. And I really look forward. I wish you all the success with your film.
Oh, Sandra, thank you so much. I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to get into this space and try and do something in it, and very grateful for the opportunity to get to know you and to try and help spread the message here in your world. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for being here with me today. If this resonated with you, subscribe wherever you listen and share it with someone else on their journey. And if you're ready to go deeper, take the free Inner Source assessment at innersourcepodcast.com. It'll help you discover exactly what kind of inner work you need right now and where to start. Until next time, remember that everything you're searching for is already within you.